Good Tuesday afternoon. This is David coming to you from Charleston, South Carolina. If you don't believe me, East Bay Deli. Cup of coffee this morning, waiting to meet with a couple of students today. Being in town here this week, just kind of hanging out and enjoying in Charleston. I'm in the process of grading your application 5.1s and thought I would bounce a couple of things out to you that I'm seeing in the papers just to reinforce some of the key things that I've talked about over the last few weeks. One of the big things that I think is really important, we just finished that lesson on bias, and one of the key things that you have in that lesson is what is bias? And when you look at it from an academic and from a research writing perspective, bias is anything that you write in your paper that has a definitive word in it that is not supported. And so you will see I'm getting really, really picky on these in your papers, because if you use words like all, always, will, must, without proper support for it, you're exhibiting writer's bias. And so anytime you use those definitive words, you need to make sure you have a source. Or what you need to do is to make sure that you use words like may or could. If you walk out of anything in this class, with anything in this class, I would hope that you would learn to either A, support your opinions, or B, utilize non-definitive words. Otherwise, you're exhibiting writer's bias. So I'm getting really, really picky on these, and you'll notice that in your grading this week. The second thing is writing in first person. Now, again, I've said this over and over too. Writing in first person is okay if the paper is specifically about you, the author. But if it's not about you, then you can't write in first person. Now, when I ask you in your assignments for your opinion in an application, that does not give you license to write in first person. What it does give you license to do is to go find research and write as a third person writer in that with support for your opinion. So you can't say, well, my opinion is, or my experience is this. The other thing, too, in research papers are instructional. They're not conversational. And so discussion boards that we have in each lesson are conversational. They are meant to interact like in a classroom setting. But research papers are not conversational. They are instructional. And so make sure in your research papers, unless it's specifically about you, that you do not use I, you do not use we, you do not use you in those papers. You write in third person. I'm getting really picky on this one too as you go forward. The third thing is some of you are using CSU Online Library for your sources, and for those who are, you're getting much better grades, and so continue to do that. For those of you who are dragging, kicking, and screaming to use the CSU Online Library, I would encourage you to do that. You need to find those peer-reviewed journal articles that are found at the library versus doing a Google online search. Again, this is all about peer review. It's all about having those types of support for your research writing that is key, okay? Also, make sure you look at the comments on your papers. I know many of you do. Some of you, I wonder, because you make the same mistakes every week. And so I would encourage you. I spend a lot of time going through your papers and making my comments on your papers. So if you're not reading my comments on your papers, then I would encourage you to start doing that. One of the things you're probably noticing, this is week 5, I'm getting tougher on grading, and so those things that you may have gotten by with in the first week, you're not getting by with those anymore. So make sure that you kind of up your game, so to speak, on the writing, because I'm upping my game on grading those papers. Okay, let's talk about APA for a second. I'm starting to get a little bit more particular about APA. I've provided a lot of APA resources for you. For example, in the doc sharing, I have given you the APA proper reference citations formatted properly for APA for every single book used in this course. And so the 13 books, I'm talking about the ebooks, the 13 books that are inside the ebook, I have those in doc sharing. They've been there since the first week of class. So there really is no excuse for you not to format those properly in your reference section. Also, anytime you use Amano's story, for example, in a paper, you have to cite the book that it comes from. And so just because we've talked about Amina every week doesn't give you license to not cite the Now You're Thinking book. So make sure that you do that. Also with APA, I have several videos that are under the New Student Getting Started section. The APA ebook that's under Course Home is there, and then the Purdue OWL site is there. And I would encourage you to look at all those, to also look at those videos that I have under there, because I take some of the most commonly missed issues on APA and I give you examples in a follow my mouse type of format. So I'd encourage you to go back and do that. One of the things that you'll notice too in some of your papers, I'm asking you to be more judicious with your words. And what I mean by that is don't use unnecessary words in your paper. Make sure that each word has a meaning and it has a value as you go forward. And then finally, I'm sure you've seen this in your papers, I always have statements, it seems like, that say define then apply. In this last application, we talked about empathy plus sincerity equals persuasion. And so in each one of those areas, I would encourage you, before you begin to apply that and begin to write on that you define what you mean by empathy, you define what you mean by sincerity, and you define what you mean by persuasion. Because as soon as you make that definition, it'll provide the foundation for the people who are reading your paper. They will understand the basis by which you're making your comments. So define things before you apply them. Do not assume that the writer has the same understanding about a word or a phrase or a term that you do, because many times or sometimes they may not. Okay? A perfect example of this one, for example, is persuasion. I see a lot of you who are using the word connection for persuasion. Well, connection, in my viewpoint, is not persuasion. Connection means you've heard me, okay? You've heard me. Persuasion means I've convinced you to act upon what I've told you. And so one is just an understanding. The other has an action component. And so if you just write persuasion without defining for the reader what you mean by that, I may be thinking about action, you may be thinking about just connection, and we may not even meet in the middle, okay? Just thought I would do that and provide a brief video this week in case some of you are wondering why the grades are getting a little bit lower as you get forward. Again, one of the key things is the things that I talk about each week, I encourage you to look at. If you have any questions on those, please contact me. And also, I'm going to be in Charleston the rest of the week. I'm meeting with a couple of students today just to chat. And if any of the rest of you would like to get together, I would love to sit down and have a convo with you. All right? Have a great day. Talk to you soon.